Sometimes as professionals, as a lawyer or as a real estate broker, you have to be cruel to be kind in the right measure. Let me give you an example, and then we'll figure out how to generalize that so you can recognize it in situations beyond the example. Imagine you're a broker, you're working with a buyer in a transaction, the deal went under contract, the contract has been alive for 4 or 5 weeks, the transaction is supposed to close tomorrow. The transaction is supposed to close tomorrow. The buyer has gotten past all of the buyer's outs under the contract. There are no longer any contingencies in the contract that will excuse the buyer from performing. The buyer's earnest money has gone hard. See other videos about the ambiguity of that term. But in any event, the buyer's earnest money has gone as hard as it can under the Real Estate Commission approved contract. And the day before the closing, maybe even the morning of the closing, the buyer calls you up. Yes, I am still of the generation where this is how we used to call people. The buyer calls you up and says, you know what? For whatever reason they give you, they've lost interest in the property. They don't want to buy the property. And they ask you for help. We want to get out of this deal, and we want to get our $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of earnest money back. I would suggest to you that that is an example of a situation where you sort of have to be cruel to be kind. Initially what you do is you explore their reasons for not wanting to close on the transition, as you would as a good agent, as a good advocate for that person, but also as a good salesperson, because maybe there are objections to closing on the purchase are things that you can overcome. But in this video, I'm presuming that the objections that the buyer has, you conclude are not objections that you can overcome. There's 2 reasons then why I don't think you should be too helpful in trying to help the buyer get their earnest money back. The 2 reasons are, number one, you're setting yourself up for the buyer to be disappointed with you. In a situation like that, sure, it's possible that the seller will feel pity on the buyers and agree to release the earnest money back to the buyer, and you will be a hero. But at least in the situations that I see, that's not the case, and the buyers get miffed at you because you were unsuccessful in getting the buyer's earnest money back. And they also have remorse that you should have helped them understand better what the significance was about the passage of the loan termination contingency, for example. So that's one of the reasons that you don't offer to be too helpful in that situation, is you put yourself in the crossfire. But the other reason is in a way it takes somebody with a different kind of license than yours. And you run into situations like that all the time where buyers ask you for help, for example, about trying to make guesses about the significance of a structural concern about the property. You do not have the license, you do not have the expertise to be able to evaluate the structural concerns about the property. If you were to step into it and follow the request of your client to analyze the structural concerns of the property, you're actually doing the buyer a disservice because you are not qualified to do so. So, in somewhat of a self-serving way, when that buyer just has cold feet, you've got to explain to them that there's pros and cons of the different approaches they take. The buyers might want to ask for forgiveness from the seller. The buyers might want to be aggressive and bluff something. The buyers might want to do something in the middle. And you're not the person to make those judgment calls. In a self-serving way, I will suggest to you that what you want to do is refer those buyers to a lawyer. Don't refer them to me. I want to represent you. But those buyers need to talk to a lawyer. Let the lawyer be the bearer of bad news, and let the lawyer be in the crossfire if the lawyer is not successful. Remember the theme. It's a situation in which your help won't lead to a closed transaction, and it's a situation in which you're not licensed to be able to provide the advice that your clients seek. In those situations, resist the urge to cure the situation and help the buyer get to other professionals who can help that buyer cure the situation. Again, sometimes you got to be cruel to be kind in the right measure. It's a complicated world out there. Be careful.